Thanks for staying with us. It's time now to look at what's trending, making headlines, that is, on Nigerian newspapers this morning. Theophilus and I have got a host of them before us. Let's check out First News now. The biggest story is captioned, "No going back on strike." That's according to Labour. Says we have no agreement with federal government to suspend action as NEC. We brought up that report earlier on the show. NEC is begging NLC and TUC not to cripple the economy. Of course, there are more riders, one of which is that the Justice Minister, Lateef Fagbemi, has written to the labor unions saying a planned action is a gross breach of court order. In the meantime, a CSO is said to have vowed to thwart Labour's planned indefinite strike. There's an interesting, splash of pictures also on the First News, and it's there's the headline or the description there, which says an alleged high-handedness. Civil servants in the Federal Ministry of Works in Abuja blocking access into the ministry to protest against what they call high-handedness by the supervising Minister of Works, Senator Dave Umahi, on Thursday. There's also an interesting story there down below the pictures of the happenings at the Federal Ministry of Works, and that is the Deputy Governor of Edo State and his principal, Governor Obaseki. Obaseki is telling his deputy, "I have accepted your apology," and says, "Your unwarranted provocation cost me severe personnel discomfort." Let's quickly check out the Daily Times now. It's still on the pending NLC strike. An official is quoted as giving some conditions as to a possibility of Labour calling off the proposed indefinite strike. But NLC scoffs at President's planned October the 1st speech if it doesn't address issues, while Nupeng Bank workers in massive mobilization. NEC says give Tinubu more time. All right, that's on Daily Times. On Nigerian News Direct, October 3 strike action, pressure mounts as NEC reps and others beg Labour to shelve plans. Nigeria cannot withstand another mass action. This is according to members of the House of Representatives. Up there on the Nigerian News Direct, Tribunal affirms Governor Obasani's election, dismisses Ashiru's petition. And there's a report, FGA marks 75 billion naira for financing of 100,000 startups and MSMEs. To The Nation now. The Nation says, government to TUC and NLC respect court order barring strike. AGF rights unions, Falano, the DSS, IG, and the NSA. Labour, on the other hand, is saying it's judicial terrorism and a breach of our rights. All right, there, Obaseki says, "I forgive Shuaibu's aberrant behavior." That's up there on The Nation. And there is a report down on The Nation as to how Southeast can overcome insecurity by governors and leaders. On The Punch now, is still on the Labour's indefinite strike. The Punch goes on to say that the TUC is insisting that threats will not deter them. "We are no cowards." Governors ask NLC to shelve strike. AGF says strike will be contempt of court. And Ogun, I'm looking at stories below the front page of The Punch. Ogun APC, PDP confident as tribunal rules on Saturday. That should be interesting to watch out for. Osho accident, there is sad one as 5 Lautech students and driver burnt to death. Leadership says NAS budget, that's the National Assembly budget, has been stagnant for 13 years. That's according to the Speaker. 6 killed in fresh southern Kaduna attack. 100 die, 150 injured in Iraqi wedding in Feno. And finally, with me is the Daily Trust. Daily Trust is leading with the big story there. Kaduna Tribunal upholds Ubasani's election on technical ground, says election inconclusive, orders rerun in 4 local government areas after considering merit, will appeal. This from the PDP candidate, and Governor Sani, a victorious one, is saying that the judgment affirms mandate given to me. Quickly now, Theophilus.
So we move to this Nigeria newspaper, and it says NAF strikes, villagers abandon Anambra Imo communities. IPOB ESN denied destruction of camps. Suspected gunmen flee hideouts, sources say. Suspend your planned strike, NEC tells Labour as NLC insists on action. Controversy trails the tribunal judgments on Kaduna governorship election. These are the stories and more in this Nigeria. We move to salient news. It says, within 4 months, Tinubu borrows over 1.5 trillion naira from World Bank. That's according to the Debt Management Office. The loans are for education, $700 million, power, $750 million, women empowerment, $500 million. That's the rider here. Moving on, Adebutu versus Abiodun. Ogun Tribunal delivers judgment Saturday as APC says no cause for alarm. That's in Salient Times this morning. Business Day says flights to dollars heightens as inflation dwarfs returns. That's in Business Day this morning. Other stories here says Shell-funded solar factory targets Chinese imports. Rice vests silence over Chaka buyout fee raises question. That's in Business Day this morning. And finally with me, Nature News, the Environment First says greening Nigeria. State government adopts ambitious tree planting initiatives to tackle climate change. Experts advocate for trees with economic value to communities. Green technology, solution to gas flaring in Nigeria. That's according to Professor Idris. Sanwo-Olu orders cleanup along Lagos Red Line corridor. That's one story as well. And finally, 75% of farm produce exports comes from Jigawa. That's according to the NSC. That's in the Nature News this morning. Kemi.
All right. Of course, the labor strike looms. It's said to be an indefinite one, Theophilus, if and when it commences on Tuesday next week, October the 3rd. I say if because when you look at, the precedent so far, Labour has not been silent exactly on the issue of hardship on Nigerians and its stance, but it remains to be seen, excuse me, it remains to be seen how, what will happen between now and October the 3rd. Of course, between now and then, Nigerians will also be looking forward to the President's Independence Day speech.
Definitely.
On Sunday, which many reckon will address these unresolved issues amidst talks between the federal government and Labour. Of course, Labour, on the other hand, is saying there's really not been much forthcoming from the presidency in terms of the deliverables, the palliatives, in terms of the welfare of the Nigerian worker or the average Nigerian. So there's so much pressure on Labour now. There's also the issue of is Labour in contempt of court, because there is a court order,
yes.
Way before the ministers were sworn in, but until the court order is lifted or vacated, so to speak, it still stands, and that is the position of the Attorney General of the Federation.
So the court order still stands.
Right.
So it means that if the court order still stands, then Labour might be in contempt of court. Well, you are the legal person here, so you should know better.
But we are all under the rule of the law. The rule of the law is supreme, and well, this is a twist, but of course Labour is being backed by Femi Falana.
How much of a twist is this?
Labour is being backed by Femi Falana, a learned, very learned, lawyer on the matter, and we don't know how far this will go, because in the words of Labour, they're calling it judicial terrorism, that it is well within their rights to go on strike, and we wait to see how it will all pan out. But, amidst the talks, the government has made a case. We saw the state governors, in the report today when the NEC body met. We saw, the pleas, from their own end, because they also are stakeholders on the matter, looking at, the interventions from state government so far, the distribution of palliatives, which is still ongoing. It's a work in progress. Then the issue of there was a talk then of a national or a state-owned welfare register, that will
cater for more people.
Cater for more people as against the federal government's run register, social welfare register at the time, which they said did not reflect the true realities of states. And so they intervened by, insisting that let them come up with their own, register of residents, so that will determine how palliatives will be shared. So for government, it is work in progress, and let the negotiations, let the channels of communication not be broken.
I believe that the federal government between now and Tuesday should meet Labour, and they should come up with an amicable solution to all of this, because the truth is, while Labour has the right to go on strike, I do not think strike might be the answer to our problems. If we have, like you said, channels of communication has to be open. And so if we have such situations, we shouldn't expect that everything will go on fine. And by possibly midnight on Monday, we should hear something different, that the strikes have been called off.
All right, Theophilus is hopeful there.
I
will keep my fingers crossed.
I am, actually.
I will keep my fingers crossed, because, there seems to be so much controversy on the matter, because when you weigh in on the role that Labour has, or the role Labour should have, on the welfare of Nigerians, and, one could also argue that it's well within their rights.
Definitely.
The realities on the ground, speaks of hardship, across, many divides. The rich are feeling it.
Everyone
the poor,
is
especially
everyone.
The market women, the customers, everyone is feeling it. How much you buy a product today is not how much you'll meet it the next day. But, these are realities, again, that the president and his team met on ground. You would call them inherited woes. And he has said, "Do not envy me." Where we have
for
it,
the job.
we have it. We have it under control, and just give us some time, because some of these things may not exactly bring about short-term measures. The analysts have said these are long-term measures before we can now begin to see a much better, economic reality. It might take, somewhat, but it's important that Nigerians see the government is working. It's important that government is also seen to be communicating with stakeholders, including Labour, because Labour is also talking about they don't get to speak with government, or they don't get to hear as often as they want to from government. So these are, issues that one also needs to talk about. We'll see how it goes, though. But
especially with the president's speech coming up on Sunday.
Yes, okay, so I'm looking forward to that. I am optimistic.
It should address all of these issues as well.
Right, and of course, the interesting story that we also saw about, Dave Umahi, engineer Dave Umahi, and, since his inauguration, he's been so vocal, and now that he now has, to contend, so to speak, with his officials in his immediate ministry as supervising ministry. We're looking at First News. The pictures of the standoff there, say it all. First News talking about alleged high-handedness. He came in earlier, found that a number of civil servants within the ministry were not on set. They were not around. They had arrived late. And then he carried out some form of disciplinary measure. And they, in turn, weren't having none of that. They said it's due to the hardship on the land that they chose to do what they did. Well, you can also look at the pictures on the Punch. The Punch also has a bit of some more graphic detail or pictorial detail. Umahi locks out workers. Protesters cite hardship for lateness.
Well, I understand what the protesters are saying, but I also listened to what the minister said. And he mentioned that he had meetings with officials, senior officials in the ministry, and they've brought about these kinds of issues about the fact that people don't come to work early because of this economic issue. And so he gave directive that, okay, workers should resume at 9 a.m. And at 9:30, when he arrived at work, I was asking for some files, realized that a lot of workers were not around. So it also means that and we understand the economic reality is quite hard, but it doesn't mean that because while we are working, we work in the private sector. But we know that once we have to come to work, we have to come to work. If resumption is 8 a.m., it should be 8 a.m. You should be at office at 8 a.m. no matter what. If there's any excuse, then you can take excuse from your boss and give some reasons. But the workers' points were valid. The governor's points were valid. And I like the fact that he had time to talk to his people, to relate with them. And I'm sure they understand where the former governor, where he's coming from. Because immediately he was sworn in, he took action and went around different federal government projects. He even came to Lagos and saw situation of things, and he expressed dissatisfaction at a lot of them, of course, especially with some road projects, saying that the roads cannot last more than 7 years, which is it's an aberration in my own words, because when you're constructing roads, it's supposed to be far longer than that. You should ensure that the roads can stand the test of time, at least within 10, 15, 20 years. So,
all right, let peace reign, and let the work continue. We hope that the ministry gets to move beyond all the happenings of Thursday and work for the greater good of all. Well, that said.